My name is Tim Pederson. I am an investment advisor, financial consultant at Thrivent Financial. And I am here because Mr. Rick Bloom over there had heard me speak at a conference that Pastor Chris and he attended a couple weeks ago around the topic of nonprofit and giving and qualified distributions and donor-advised funds and things that could be impactful at a year-end giving conversation. And so Rick asked me after, do you think we do a good enough job at Good Shepherd making those avenues known to our member base? And I said, we do a good enough job, but we can always do better. He said, well, who's the right audience to hear that message? And I said, well, it probably starts with your PrimeTimers group. So what I'm going to just touch briefly on today are a couple of different year-end giving strategies that you might know about, you might already be doing, and if you don't, you might find relevant and helpful. And so you may or may not recall, we passed some new tax legislation at the end of last year. And so one of the great changes in that legislation is around deductions, standard deductions, itemized deductions. Now Brenda had a little disclosure in the end of her slide. This is my verbal disclosure. I am not a tax accountant. I do not do taxes. I am also not an attorney. I do not do estate planning. But you cannot do what I do, and you cannot work in this field without touching on those topics as you meet with people. So specifically regarding taxes, the deduction change is really causing some fear among churches and nonprofits. In essence, the itemized deductions have been elevated, which is great. A large majority of our country will use the itemized deductions moving forward. If you're a married couple, it's now $24,000 on your tax itemized deductions. What nonprofits are fearful of is that might disincent some giving strategies. That might take away the itemizing that you may have been doing in the past by giving gifts to Good Shepherd or to a charity. There will be more people that could use the standard deduction moving forward when you do your taxes, because it's a larger number. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what are some strategies that we can work around that could benefit Good Shepherd? Number one is called a qualified charitable distribution. Is anybody in this room retired? So I'm in the right room then. Does anybody that is retired have an IRA in their portfolio? Does anybody own an IRA in their portfolio? So you're accustomed, if you're over the age of 70 and a half, that you have to take a required minimum distribution every year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Next question, does anybody believe the money we give to the government right now is always being used with the most responsible of intentions? Is anyone under that assumption in this room? So with those two things being said, you do own IRAs, you have to take money out every year, and maybe Uncle Sam could be a little more responsible. I am of the opinion, as are most advisors that do what I do, that if we can find ways to cut out Uncle Sam, that's generally speaking a good thing. One way you can do that is through a qualified charitable distribution, a QCD. Your IRAs that you hold, if you simply have a conversation with the investment company that holds that IRA, you can direct them to give your required minimum distribution directly to a charity. Does anybody know a charity that you're familiar with? Good Shepherd is a 501c3, by definition as a church. It can accept charitable distributions from your IRA if that is in your heart to do. So your taxable IRAs could, in theory, escape tax. So what are the benefits of a qualified charitable distribution? So when we do our taxes, and you pay your tax to Uncle Sam on that required minimum distribution every year, you have to report that, don't you? It goes on your tax return. A QCD says, I want to give my required minimum distribution to a charity. Therefore, the government says, that's awesome, you don't have to pay tax on it. So if we believe that the government might or might not be making great use of our funds, perhaps we should consider bypassing Uncle Sam altogether, taking our required minimum distribution that we have to take out, it is a law, and telling our investment company that holds the IRA, I would like a portion of that, or all of that, your choice, to go to a charity who we've already determined could be Good Shepherd, right? So that's a giving strategy where you are saying, I don't want to be taxed on my required minimum distribution. I'd rather bypass the tax. In lieu of needing that extra money every year, I would like to give it to Good Shepherd, not pay the tax on it, basically say to Uncle Sam, I am cutting you out of the equation. That is how it works. There is specific language that you need to talk to your investment firm about. They have to actually designate to the IRS that this is a qualified charitable distribution. But if you don't want to pay tax on your RMD every year that you have to take out because you're over 70 and a half, pretty simple to do, and it's a fabulous year-end giving strategy. You're not paying the tax, Good Shepherd is getting the benefit, or another charity. I mean, I have a lot of clients that give to multiple charities through a qualified charitable distribution. Any question on that? Yes?
Can you designate that IRA distribution without itemizing?
Yes, you absolutely can. And so it does not matter if you itemize your tax deductions or not. What we do know matters is you have to take a required minimum distribution out if you have an IRA or a work plan and you're over 70 and a half. That much is a certainty. So you're welcome to pay the tax on that. That is your choice. But some people would rather cut out the tax, give that directly to a charity, and say, we're just going to cut you out this year, Uncle Sam. That's an okay thing to do. And you actually can do that up to $100,000 per person every year. So I don't know what your RMD amounts are. You would know that coming out of your IRAs. But if your RMD amount is $14,000 a year, or $10,000 a year, or $3,000 a year, it does not matter. You control how much tax you pay in that. If you want to cut all the tax out, you can designate it to a charity, and there will be no taxable income shown on that. Just make sure and tell your accountant that you are doing this. Other questions on that?
How can you find a list of qualified charities?
Well, that is in your heart. So you know who you have affinity for supporting. I would tell you that one pretty good qualified charity that we're in the presence of right now is Good Shepherd. There are certainly others. And the word qualified charitable distribution simply means it's coming out of an IRA, a taxable account, and it's going to a charity, any charity of your choosing. And so, yes, well, thank you. Fran would like to be a charity. I can't tell you who to give to. I can just tell you the way you can achieve that. And that's by taking taxable money, saying, I don't want to pay the tax, talking to whoever holds that money and saying, I want to give my distribution to this charity this year. There's specific language they have to use. Okay, and then lastly, and then I'm done. There's also such a thing called donor-advised funds. So backing up for a sec, for a qualified charitable distribution, we are talking specifically about IRA money, work retirement plan money, things you have to pay tax on. That's a great vestibule to accomplish a qualified charitable distribution. For a donor-advised fund, we are talking specifically about other types of assets. Stocks, appreciated stocks, mutual funds, real estate, life insurance proceeds, things that Brenda was touching on. So we have the Good Shepherd Foundation, and I would tell you that everybody needs different buckets of money when you're in retirement. You need some safe money that you can pull out and use as income if you need it. You probably need some growth money of some context because inflation is 2.2%. If you don't have something going more than 2.2%, you're not keeping up with inflation, right? And so donor-advised funds are a way where maybe you have a little too much sitting in the savings account or the checking account or a CD or something that you're just not making use of because you don't need it to live on. It's a great opportunity to say, I'd like to take a chunk of that and perhaps consider the Good Shepherd Foundation, make a one-time gift. You get the tax deduction in the year that you give it. You get to lower your taxation in the year you give it. The foundation then gets the opportunity to help you disseminate out, and you saw all the good that's being done. But I don't think we talk about this enough within Good Shepherd. 17 years at Good Shepherd, primarily at the West Campus. I'm seeing a lot of your faces for the first time. That's okay, we're a big church. But if we don't get these messages out to groups like this, how are we going to know these avenues exist? So you can talk specifically to your investment advisor, your tax preparer, your estate planning attorney. You can ask me questions. These are ways that you can get a tax deduction at year end. It's the middle of November. Tax year ends in 6 weeks. So qualified charitable distributions have to be done in the year of taxation. So you have a December 31st deadline. So if you have not taken your RMD yet, and you're thinking about, well, what should I do with that RMD money? I don't need it. Consider gifting it through a qualified charitable distribution. If you're sitting on assets that you think, I don't need right now, they're not necessarily growing, consider a donor-advised fund through the Good Shepherd Foundation and take the tax deduction. These are ways you can help charities that you're near and dear to, and yourself pay less taxes. That's all I wanted to cover. Any questions that you have? Thank you for listening. Have a great afternoon.